My name is Joe Mako, and I've been using Tableau for going on 7, 8 years now. And when I first started using Tableau, I was blown away by it. It was magical. It dragged and dropped, and suddenly had a visualization. And I've been spending every day since then trying to figure out what's going on visible in the background inside of Tableau. That's what I want to share with you guys here today. Because the way that I look at Tableau is that there's really two ways that you can approach it and understand it. One is instrumental, and the other is relational. Your instrumental is going to be your step-by-step, 1, 2, 3, follow this recipe. And that's a great place to start if we just want to get a quick win. But then when you want to do something that nobody else has done before, or you want to build something that is custom for your situation, then you need to have this relational understanding. And that's a deeper understanding. Take that idea of the analogy of like baking, where the instrumental is your recipe, follow the steps. The relational understanding is being able to cook like a chef and knowing how these ingredients work together and what's going to impact them, and why would you choose one thing over another, and knowing all of the intricate factors and combinations of them. And so really what that comes down to for Tableau is one question. What is a dimension? If you can answer this question in Tableau, everything else can be discovered. That this is the keystone for Tableau, is an awareness of what is a dimension. Now, for a lot of people that are new to Tableau, they would say, oh, well, a dimension, that's categorical information. Is this not close enough to me? Okay, let's try this. So, for normal people, generally, when we come new to Tableau, we would say, all right, a dimension, that's categorical. This is qualitative data. This is descriptive data. That we would say, this field is a dimension. And that's how we would talk about it. But Tableau is different. When we're dealing with the context of Tableau, the definitions of these terms change. And this is that mental model shift that is really difficult for newcomers to Tableau, or even people that have been using Tableau for ages but haven't thought about it in this way, that without awareness of your dimensions and what it means to be a dimension in Tableau, Tableau is a frustrating piece of software. It's confusing. It doesn't do what you expect it to do, and it's like, why did it happen this way, but then my data changed, and now it doesn't work right anymore. That is what I have dealt with for the first many years of using Tableau, and then every time Tableau adds a new feature, I have to go through this same trial and error operation again to figure out what is Tableau doing in the background. How is it treating dimensions? How does this aspect of dimensions impact what Tableau is deciding to do automatically? Because so often, we do not have direct control over what Tableau is going to do. We have this kind of inference or this one-step removed control over how Tableau is going to behave for us. And that can be really wonderful for this rapid iteration and cycle of visual analytics, and it creates a beautiful experience, but it also creates this frustrating experience without awareness of what a dimension is. So to me, what is a dimension? And it comes down to two pill types inside of Tableau. It's either all your pills are going to be either a dimension or a measure. Now, when we open up Tableau, we see our data window on the left-hand side, and it's broken out into dimensions and measures. That's not telling you what the field is what the field is. That's telling you what the default pill that you're going to get. And this change in language is really vital. And you're wondering, all right, Joe's going to talk about LoD calculations. Why is he talking about dimensions and measures? Because without awareness of what your dimensions are, every complex feature of Tableau is impenetrable, or it's going to behave unexpected. That with awareness of your dimensions, you can understand filter actions, you can understand table calculations, you can understand data blending, you can know LoD calculations. All of it is dependent on dimension awareness. And so this shift in language of saying this field is a dimension to saying the pill is a dimension. And what I mean by this is that any field that is a record in your data source can be used as a dimension. It doesn't matter whether it's the number of sales, whether it's a date, whether it's whatever. Any field that exists in your data at a record level calculation can be used as a dimension. Because dimension is your group by clause. If you know SQL, anything that you can use in your group by clause, those are your dimensions inside a Tableau. That those are synonymous terms. Group by clause and dimension are equivalent. Another way that we can talk about it in common language is to say our granularity, that dimensions determine our granularity, or the combination of dimensions that we're interested in. They set our level of detail, that our dimensions are our granularity, our level of detail, our group by clause. And this is something that it takes practice. I will tell you, every time I open up a new worksheet, or somebody comes to me with a question, why isn't this working, or what's going on here, or how can I get the results that I want, the number one question is, what are your dimensions? And if they don't have awareness of their dimensions, they're not going to be able to get to where they want to get to. And so the alternate dimensions, because a pill can either be a dimension or a measure, the alternate is a measure. And so what is a measure? Generally, outside of Tableau, we would say, well, measures are our qualitative data, or our rather quantitative data, the things that we count, or things of that nature. But inside of Tableau, again, it's the shift in language, that your measures in Tableau are aggregations, or they're a calculation that happens after aggregation, or it's another way that we can say it is it's rolled up to our dimension level. And so this fundamental awareness is key for everything in Tableau. And so I want to pause here for a minute and see if anybody has any questions about this. I know it's kind of unfamiliar. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point, and this is something I've struggled with Tableau, and I thought I was the only person struggling with this, which made visualization very hard. So my question is, are you saying then that any measure, such as a cost per lead, cost per sale, anything like that can be used as a dimension?
If it exists in your underlying data, it can be used as a dimension. Let me show you a quick example of what I mean by that. That it's kind of hard to, it's easy to get confused about these terms, where we'd say, all right, well, this thing that we would commonly call a measure, what is it inside a Tableau? Let me see if I can open up a quick sample here. Data source sample. And so down here we got something like profit. Normally we'd call, all right, profit is a measure, and that's good for talking about it outside of Tableau. But then we would say this pill right here that I placed out here, because it's using the sum aggregation, that's what makes it a measure. Why is it here in the list of measures? Because its default is to be aggregated. So then I just used my left mouse button to drag and drop, it automatically became an aggregation, and so it's automatically a measure. But I could change this. I could say, you know what, I don't want to treat it as a measure. I want to treat it as a dimension. I want to use those individual values in my underlying data to determine my marks. And so I can change it into a dimension. And now instead of getting a single mark that aggregates all of the profit values into a single value, I now have a mark for each individual profit value. And so that's what I mean when I say dimension versus measure. Group by clause versus aggregation. Does that make a little bit more sense?
I think so, yeah.
And so it takes a lot of practice. There is a shift in language, and Tableau has overloaded these terms. That if you're used to talking about, well, profit is a measure, sales is a measure, versus inside of Tableau, now anything that's an aggregation is a measure, and anything that is your group by clause is a dimension. And so Tableau is data agnostic. It doesn't care what your data type is, or what your data is, or your business logic. Tableau will just work, and you supply your logic and how you want it to behave. And Tableau will do what you ask it to do. But the problem is, how do we manage this language of these terms of dimension and measure and what they mean to us outside of Tableau versus inside of Tableau? Any other questions about dimensions or measures or what this means? Go ahead.
Joe, I wanted to comment on this. This is something that we found incredibly useful for a lot of things. But one huge mistake that I see people making with this kind of thing, let's say that you wanted to find out your median profit or something like that, right? And if you do a reference line with the median with this, it only counts that 4,000 mark once, even though there might be 50 different specific $4,000 profits. So your medians are way off, and I've seen some horrible mistakes from that. And so you actually have to put in detail something that makes every single 4,000 value independent.
Absolutely. That is a key to Tableau, and that goes with this idea of awareness of your level of detail. That if I'm going to use something that is not going to give me an individual record, profit is not a unique identifier for an individual record. But something like this combination of order ID and customer ID and a whole host of all sorts of different combination of dimensions would specify our granularity of our underlying data. That is what you need out here as dimensions to get your granularity. And then we can take our profit and bring it up to that granularity. We can say, all right, so at order ID as our granularity, order ID is our dimension, what is the overall median profit? And so if I put that out here, now I've got the sum of profit at the granularity of order ID, and then when I add the reference line, that this reference line is an aggregation on top of these results. That your reference lines, the ones that are not total, these sums, minimum, maximum, average, median, these are aggregations on top of these results. So you're doing one query to get the sum of profit at the order ID, and that results in some order set here of about 5,009 records. And then when we set to do this median, now what we're going to do is take the median of the sum and then give that result. And so it's about awareness of your granularity. And precisely to your point, that if someone used sum as your dimension, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense if you really want to get the individual records. Well, if you want the individual records, you bring out a dimension that will get you that individual record, that dimension that is unique to identify those individual records. Does that make sense?
I mean, I've seen this error happen so many times. I'm almost thinking that Tableau needs to build in a little warning. Hey, you're taking a median of the individual value of the values that are shown and not the actual individual values. Believe me, I've seen it in my organization now repetitively to the point that I feel like we need to throw one step.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's something that we all struggle with. That even myself, the first time using Tableau, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But as far as the suggestion of having a warning dialog, we would end up with hundreds of warning dialogues inside of Tableau because there's so many little areas where you can trip it up. And Tableau is going to let you shoot yourself in the foot. If you are not aware of your dimensions, you're going to come up with bad values and wrong numbers. And that's really what it comes down to for that situation. Without awareness of your dimensions, Tableau is not guaranteed to give you the results that you want. And that's really the point of what I'm trying to say here. Okay, any other questions about dimensions? Go ahead again, sir.
I really think Tableau should do a better job of explaining this to users, because this is a big, in my case, it's a big hang-up.
All I can say to that is, amen, brother. I am right there with you. That this is what I've been trying to tell Tableau for umpteen years. As long as I have understood the importance of dimensions, I've been harping on it. And Tableau, they know about this. That they created the software, and this is really their philosophy of Tableau. I don't know if I've got a slide here that talks about it. That really what it comes down to, the basis of Tableau, that what makes Tableau Tableau. Why is Tableau a unique piece of software? It's because of their technology called VizQL. And so what is VizQL? VizQL is pills on shelves to generate a query that will then draw marks on a canvas. And so what is the factors to VizQL? It's dimension versus measure, continuous versus discrete, and data type. Yet these three factors on your pills, not your fields, because all that we're talking about over here, this is just default configuration. I can take profit and move it up here, and now profit is default to be a dimension. These are just your default configurations. This is not telling you what it is. What it is determined by what's out here configured on your pills on the shelves. And so the pills and how they're configured, the data type of the underlying data, the Is it blue or green? That's your continuous versus discrete. And then the idea of dimension versus measure. Is it group by or is it aggregation? And notice that the pill color does not determine whether it's a dimension or measure. Pill color only tells you whether it is continuous or discrete. And so what does continuous versus discrete mean? That just means, are you going to get an axis or are you going to get a header? Or if you put it onto the color shelf, are you going to get individual colors or are you going to get a gradient of colors? Or if you put it onto the filter shelf, are you going to get this kind of dialog box or are you going to get this kind of dialog box, something like this, a range dialog. Work real quick, but let's do something like that. It doesn't let me drop it. That's fine. So put something like this over there. And no, so it seems some type of error right now. But the continuous versus discrete is really just going to be your interface. Blue versus green is just the display. Blue versus green, continuous versus discrete, has no impact on your computation. That dimension versus measure is what's going to impact your computation. It's what's going to impact your results. Whether you get the right number or the wrong number is dimensions. But so this awareness of these three factors of a pill, this is the foundation of Tableau. This is what makes Tableau Tableau, why Tableau behaves the way that it does in every case, as far as why is Tableau going to put a border or not put a border automatically? Why is it going to make the axis fill up the entire screen, or why is it going to make the axis squarified? All of the automatic behavior inside of Tableau comes from these three factors. And so with awareness of these factors, you can understand what Tableau is going to do and have control over why Tableau is going to do it. Now, as far as why does Tableau not talk about this more, it's because Tableau's goal is to lower the bar, to make the process of data analysis easier, to make it so that you can go directly to your solution and remove a lot of these complexities from the forefront. So you're not sitting down here programming and coding and scripting and whatnot, that you can just drag and drop. That Tableau is trying to make it less complex and hide this complexity. And I think that's a noble goal, and it's why I love Tableau, because it does make my experience really wonderful. But it also, it's a two-edged sword. On one side, it cuts and makes things a wonderful experience, but then on the other side, when I want to do something that's not simple, when I want to do something complex and intricate and precise and maybe a little bit unique, then I need to have this awareness of what Tableau is doing invisibly in the background. And it is complex, because data analysis is complex. If you read Stephen Few, he just put out a blog post the other day that talks about to do data analysis successfully takes two things. It takes skill and then it takes tools. So if you do not have the skill to do data analysis, this mindset of an analyst, but you've got wonderful tools, it's going to be hard. It's going to be an uphill struggle, no matter how good your tools are. It's just like with basketball. You can have the best shoes, but your shoes aren't going to make you a better basketball player. You have to bring this skill, this mindset, this awareness, this attention to it. It's kind of like yoga or whatnot, to have this mindfulness and this acceptance to say, you know what, it's okay that I screwed up, I got the wrong numbers, that's okay. It's important that I know that I did it wrong and I can go back and try again. That Tableau is a very forgiving software, that I can spend a day and create an analysis and come up with a result and then realize, you know what, I did it wrong. This is all meaningless, and I'm okay with throwing it out because I can start again and I can rapidly get there even faster the next time. And Tableau allows me to fail fast with this style of it hides the complexity. So it is incredibly valuable, and it is a conscious choice that Tableau chose to hide these factors, and I harp on them to expose them. And if you go to Tableau's website, they do have some videos that they put up that do explain this. If we go to tableausoftware.com, or tableau.com, since they rebranded their name, and underneath learning, they've got training and tutorials, on demand, and out here at the bottom, why is Tableau doing that? This section here is because of me harping on Tableau for multiple years, and this is the answer to your question. Why does Tableau not document it? Well, they do document it. They've got it documented right here. And this is, if for anybody that's first time using Tableau, if you're sharing Tableau with somebody else at your workplace, these 3 videos are probably the most important videos that Tableau has on our website. All right? So, all right, so let's see. Any other questions about dimensions and measures and fill types? This is the foundation of Tableau requirement before we can move on to the deeper complexities. You all good? Okay. So, let's see if we can take an interesting example on LoD Calcs. And this is a style of interacting with Tableau and learning Tableau that I'm a big fan of. Mark Jackson here has got this blog called Tableau Zen. If you just search for Mark Jackson, Tableau, you'll find his blog. He does really great work. And in this case, he's publicly showing or sharing how is he learning Tableau. Because all of us need to go through this process of learning Tableau. Me, Mark, all the other Zen masters. That we've got to give ourselves a challenge or create a situation that forces us to learn it. And this is Mark exposing that in the public and being vulnerable and courageous, and I commend him for it. And so what he said is he wanted to look at by state and then see which product has the most number of customers. So if we look at this visualization simply, it's at the granularity of state and then giving us the count distinct of customers. If we go into here and try to recreate this view real quick, that we've got ourselves mapping items of state, and then let's also filter to the US here real quick. So we're just dealing with our familiar states, and then a count distinct of customer ID. So this is essentially what he's got out there on his visualization. But then he wants to have some additional information about these states. He wants to know, in this side of this state, which product has the most number of unique customers. So generally what we would do is we would bring out the category out here as well. So what product category? And here we can see both office furnishings and paper have 15 inside of here. So I'd want to keep either one of those. Maybe if we really wanted to get complex, we could capture both of them and do all sorts of really interesting things. But at this point, I just want to capture either one of those, either paper or office furnishings, and that there's 15, but then also retain that total overall count distinct number here of 27. So for Alabama, I would want to see Alabama, paper, 15, and 27. Does everybody see where those numbers and details are coming from? And so that's a really interesting question. It gives you this context that you can deal with your data at multiple levels of granularity. And that is why LoD calculations are incredibly powerful, that they let us look at our data at multiple granularities at the same time. And so how does Tableau do that? How does LoD calculations work? Is they work with subqueries. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of time to go into a lot of details on this. There's multiple ways to get to the solution. As with many things inside of Tableau, that there's not just the one answer. And these different routes have different performance impacts. If you have small data, the performance could be equivalent across all of them. All of them will take less than a second. But when you're dealing with millions of records, now the route that you choose can have an impact on your performance. And for Mark in this case, the solution that he came up with, his first solution, it worked, but it took him 30 seconds to update the visualization. And that's really not reasonable. That there's got to be another way. And so I sent him an email and I showed him, hey, here's another way that we could look at this, and broke it down in a different way. That the way that he approached it was he used fixed LoD calculations. Because he said, well, I want to look at the count distinct of our customers at the category and the state level. And then I want to roll that up to a different level and look at the min and the max. And he did all sorts of string comparisons and jumped through a bunch of hoops in essentially a really brute force way. And it worked, but it wasn't super efficient. And so another way that we can make LoD calcs more efficient is with awareness of really what's going on inside of them. That when we say fixed at a couple of dimensions that are either different or in combination of what we have on our LoD or our viz LoD, because our viz LoD is set by our dimensions that we have out here on our shelves, on our pages, columns, rows, and marks, that those dimensions set the granularity of the marks, that is going to be our viz LoD. But then for our LoD calculations, we can specify a different granularity. We can specify that I want this to compute at the combination of state and category. And Tableau will do that, but it'll do it as a subquery. And then it will blend that subquery back in with the query to your viz LoD. And yeah, this is kind of complex, and maybe I took too big of a one to chew off here for a meeting. But what I can give you is to recommend to look up these blog posts because they detail out the different ways that Mark did this original way, and then I gave him another solution that instead of using the fixed LoD calculations, did it with a nested include-exclude calculations. And I also have this kind of scratch pad, and how did I figure this out? So the approach or my mental model for it is I say, all right, since LoD calcs are subqueries, what are the subqueries that I want to do to get to my destination? And so I say my initial subquery, well, I want to get the count distinct of customers at the state and category combination. Well, I know my viz LoD is going to be state, so it's going to have that impacted. But then I also want to include or add an additional dimension of category. So that's going to come in my include statement. So this subquery right here is generated in this statement right here, where I say include subquery count distinct of our customer name or customer ID. So that's where that's coming from. And again, I've got it down here as well. Include subcategory and count distinct of customer name. So both of those statements are effectively the same subquery here that's going to return this little miniature table or this sub-result. Then I need to figure out within inside of each state, so I've got state A and state B here, which category had the highest count distinct. And so what I'll do is a max of that at just the state level. So I will exclude the subcategory. And so that's what I'm doing essentially right here on this line, is exclude subcategory and give me the max of this count distinct that was computed at the subcategory level. And so just saying that, that's a lot of words. That's a lot to hold in your head at one time. And it's impossible for me, and that's why I have these scratch pads that let me see, all right, here's my first level, and then using that as my data source, what aggregation would I like to perform on this? Well, I want to get the max account D grouped by state, and so that's how I write my statement, is I remove that subcategory from here. But then we want to do an additional level on top of here, is that we want to figure out, well, now that we figured out what that max is, now I need to know what was that category to bring that text out. So we have to go back again to the state and category level and figure out where does that count distinct of that combination of state and category equal to our max. And so I've got a really simple example here, and we can see these 7s are going to be equal. So where they're equal, return our category string. And again here, for when they're equal, return that category string. And then finally, we want to bring that all back up to our original viz LoD of state. And that's how we get our final result in our display. And so this kind of scratch pad here is what I used to write this statement. And so this statement is still kind of complex. And this is not the most efficient way to approach this. But this worked for my mental model and understanding it. If you want to see the most efficient and a better understanding of LoD calcs, I recommend Jonathan Drumney's blog, drawing with numbers. Highly recommended. This is a must-read if you use Tableau. Jonathan has got the best mind for explaining Tableau that I've ever met. So I love all his work. And he had tackled this same problem, the same situation, but he approached it differently. And he used a unique way of approaching LoD calcs, a unique kind of trick inside of here that I previously didn't know about before Jonathan shared it, where he's doing an include, but he didn't put any dimensions after it. And essentially what that says is just using the viz LoD or whatever dimensions are available outside of this one, because these LoD calculations can be nested inside of each other. As you saw inside of this one, I was nesting include on the outside, and then exclude inside of that, and then another include inside of that. So I had 3 layers of include, exclude, include. And we can do that with these LoD calcs because they're all subqueries amongst each other. And so if you're aware of what your dimensions are at each level, then you can use these more advanced ways and these more efficient ways of using LoD calcs. That it's really an amazing thing that Tableau has built here, a massive amount of complexity hidden behind a seemingly simple statement. And so it's something that we're still, as users, trying to figure out. Bora, the guy who created this feature for Tableau, he's got his own blog. If you look up Bora and Tableau, you should be able to find his blog. And he's got a 2-part series here where he goes in really in-depth into all the factors and how he thinks about LoD calcs and why it works the way that it works for him and why he did this. And then also this difference of when you have a filter, that's going to impact your fixed LoD calculations differently than how your include-exclude LoD calcs work. And so it's really a lot of complexity to Tableau, and thankfully there's people like Mark, Jonathan, and Bora that go out and share their knowledge and are willing to help people. Just as I am here today, is I want to help raise awareness of Tableau and show that you can do really amazing things inside of it. Whatever you can dream, you can do it inside of Tableau. And the first step is awareness of your dimensions. And so I want to open it up here to questions. Anybody has any questions about anything? Anything in Tableau, whether it's actions, LoD calcs, table calculations, something's not doing what you expect, more than happy to help. Go ahead, sir.
Can we go over some new features in Tableau 9 that, like, my company is still using Tableau 2, and we've been a bit hesitant to go to Tableau 9 just because,
So the question is, what are some new features of Tableau 9? So yeah, there's a lot of features in Tableau 9. In fact, Tableau put out a website that has all of the features, new features right here. So Tableau, and then products, new features, and they've got all sorts of things here that I would not be able to go over all the new features of Tableau. I don't have all of them memorized because there's got to be at least 100 different new features. So if you're interested in what it is, or you want to make the case to say, yes, you need to update, this is the place to go. For me, the #1 reason to update is going to be faster performance. That Tableau 9 is significantly faster than the older versions. If you've got dashboards or things in Tableau server or whatnot that are running slow and you want it to be more performant, upgrade to Tableau 9 and you get an immediate performance boost. If you want to take it to the next level and have things be even faster, well, Tableau's got a white paper on how to make Tableau faster. If I can find this here really quick here. White paper. Let's see if I can find it. Tableau. And yeah, Tableau performance white paper. And which one do we think it is? It's Alan Eldridge. Designing efficient workbooks. Here it is. So This is probably my favorite Tableau white paper, Designing Efficient Workbooks. If you're finding your Tableau things are working slow, this is going to be the document that will help you make it faster. Does that help you, sir? Okay, go ahead.
You ever had to do a dashboard action filter off of a measure instead of dimension?
Okay, so again, that is a great question, and that speaks to this awareness of dimensions versus measures. And what features are available inside of Tableau are determined by what kind of pill it is, whether the pill is a dimension pill or a measure pill. That if you want to do a filter action, the filter action must be powered by a dimension. So there is a technical limitation in Tableau that a measure cannot power a filter action. The only way to work around that is to pre-process your data so that that measure can be a dimension.
The specific case here was we were displaying we were using the measure values, measure names still, and we wanted to be able to click on one of those measure names. So that.
Yeah, so, okay, so the pills measure names, measure values. Those are unique kind of pills. They are not your normal dimensions or measures. That if we have, let's see if I can get a better data source here. Something like this one, or this one, there we go. All right, so if we pull out our measure names and measure values, there we go. We've got a couple of these measure names, measure values. That what's happening here is that Tableau is essentially unpivoting the data. And here's my classic way of looking at it. Is if I pull out region and then I pull out profit, let's turn this back into a sum there, and pull out sales. So I've got profit and sales out here right now. That this has got the dimension of region, and then both of these are measures, and they're continuous on the same shelf, so that means they're going to create multiple axes, and I get multiple marks cards. I get a marks card for each one of these. And so what that means is that each one of these axes could have a different granularity as well. It's really powerful to have these multiple axes. But to get to the point of, well, what about a measure names, measure values? That I could duplicate this sheet and create the same thing with the measure names, measure values. So these two worksheets here, if I get them in the same order, that these two worksheets effectively look the same, but how they got there is very different. That for this measure names, measure values one, there's only a single axis because there's only a single green pill, and so there's only a single marks card. Versus over here, I have two green pills, two axes, and two marks cards. And this looks like, well, it looks like I see two axes. Well, really, it's that same axis duplicated for each one of the measure name values. And so, what's going on underlying with the data? If we look at another view here, that take out region and sum of sales, and pull out profit here as a sum of profit. And if I do a Control A and a Control C on this data, that inside of Excel, let's do a new workbook, paste that, and let's do a Control A and just make this a little bit bigger. That this is the result, that for every mark that we have on the canvas, there needs to be a record. That's a key thing with Tableau, that if you want to draw a mark, you want to give Tableau a record. Either Tableau is going to generate that record, or you give it to Tableau in your underlying data. And so with this view here, this arrangement of pills, the SQL that Tableau generated is going to be sum of sales, sum of profit, region, group by region. And the result would be this. And so because Tableau only needed to draw 4 marks, it does not need to do any manipulation to the data to enable it to draw this on the canvas. But for this one over here, we have 8 marks on the canvas, and so Tableau would need 8 records. Well, we've got the same set of pills, so Tableau is going to send the same query to the data source, But then, what does it do to transform the data to enable it to draw that is it will essentially duplicate the data. So now instead of having these 4 records, we have 8 records. And what it did was it took these 3 records and simply copy and pasted them to duplicate them. And so that is one way that Tableau can transform the data to enable the view that you're requesting. And all of this is that VizQL. Then this other view here, we use the measure names, measure values to get ourselves 8 marks. And so if I look at this, Control A, Control C, and paste that into Excel again here, we get a different kind of structure of data here. That now, instead of simply duplicating the data, it has done what's commonly called unpivoting or transposing, where it has taken this wide data and made it tall data, and then added the differentiator as an additional field to tell which value are we dealing with. And so each of these data structures is useful in their own right. And another thing that I like to say is that if you can transform your data for Tableau, you are boundless in what you can do inside of Tableau. If you cannot transform your data prior to Tableau, you are limited in what you can do inside of Tableau. And that is the case here, that if this is my data structure, which it is for this Superstore sales here, I am not going to be able to do the action that you're requesting, because measure names is not a first-class dimension. Measure names is a construct that Tableau created in the process of unpivoting the data for the display. And that measure names, measure values unpivot happened at the very end, after all computation. And so it's not available for your interaction or formulas or anything. But if I want to have this concept of measure names available to me as a dimension so I can use it in a filter action, or if I want to do conditional formatting or all sorts of other really interesting things, then I could transform my data prior to Tableau so that it's tall. If you've ever seen the tool for Excel, it's got this reshape data tool that lets you unpivot the data. Or in version 9, they have it built in the connection dialog where you can unpivot your data as you're connecting to it. And that would enable the interaction that you're looking for.
I think I might have asked a question wrong. Alright, so what we were trying, so for example, profit and sales, not every item will have a profit even sold, right? So I'm just using the Superstore example. So we have a graph which the measure names, right? So say sales and profit, and the number of records in each, right? So if it has, so I have the calculated field where if it has a profit, it will count the record. If it's not, it won't. So you might see sales number at 100, but profit number. So number of records with sales might be 100, but the number of records with profit might be 70. So like I wanted to click on profit and then have the cost count on the dashboard. That I wanted to filter it down to 70 instead of 100. So
Okay.
you see the relevance.
So yes, I think that what you're asking for is possible, because literally, if you can dream it, it can be done. The factor for it is how do you shape your data to enable it. In the survey this morning or earlier today, David asked, what's your biggest challenge of using Tableau? And so many people said it was preparing your data for it, cleaning it, transforming it. And that is really a big issue, because Tableau doesn't transform your data. Tableau is not an ETL software. Yeah, you've got the pivot inside of the connection, and you can split some fields, and you can do some really useful basic things. But Tableau is not an ETL software. It's not going to do complex logic to transform your data. It's not going to do what you would commonly call cleaning or data quality. And so to do that requires additional software. For me, my choice is Alteryx. And inside this room, they also do the Alteryx user group. It's a phenomenal product that would enable you to transform your data to enable any interaction, any result that you want inside of Tableau. So I think that's going to be the answer. But stick with me after this here. Get my email, because what I do in my spare time, and this is open for everybody here or for your coworkers or your friends, if you've got somebody who's frustrated with Tableau, it's not doing what you want it to do, and you want to talk to someone or get some help, I'm happy to help. It's what I do in my spare time every day. I spend an hour or two with somebody from around the world, and I help them get successful in Tableau. That I dive deep in their specific question that this gentleman raised here today, and we spend the time to walk through it, look at it from all the different angles, and help you be successful. Because this is beautiful stuff. The first time I saw Tableau, it was magical, and every day since I've been trying to share that magic with as many people as I can. Because for me, it's pure joy. All right. So again, if anybody has any questions, you're more than welcome to email me. Let's see if I can bring up my email address here. It's not in here, but put in my email address, joemako@gmail.com. You're welcome to email me anytime. Might be able to help you out on a weekend or an evening. Can't do it during business hours, but it's what I love to do. Love to share, love to help. Okay. Do you want to wrap this up, David?